About 15% of your body weight is skin. If that seems a lot, remember that skin is your largest organ and one of your most important. Understanding the skin structure is the first step to maintaining the health of your armour against the outside world. This organ system also contains hair, nails and glands that produce sweat and oil. The three main functions of this system are protection, regulation and sensation. Skin's primary function is to act as a barrier. It provides protection from various environmental elements like temperature, bacteria, chemicals, the sun and more. But the blood vessels in the skin also help it regulate your body temperature. And skin is where your body uses sunlight to manufacture vitamin D. Also made up of several different components including water, protein, lipids and different materials and chemicals. The skin also contains nerves that sense cold, heat, pain, pressure and touch. Throughout your life your skin will change constantly, for better or worse. In fact, your skin will renew itself approximately once a month. Proper care is essential to maintain health in this protective organ. My name is Celena and in this lesson you are going to learn about the structure and function of the skin. The skin is a layer that covers the body and is the major external barrier between the outside world and the body. It has important protective functions and is constantly renewing itself. Skin is the largest organ in the body and covers the body's entire internal surface. It is made up of three layers: the epidermis, the dermis and the hypodermis. The skin structure is made up of an intrinsic network which serves as the body's internal barrier against pathogens, UV light and chemicals and mechanical injury. It also regulates temperature and the amount of water released into the environment. The epidermis is the most external layer of the skin and waterproof. It can range in thickness from 1 to 2 millimeters. It contains 5 layers: stratum corneum, also known as the surface layer, your stratum lucidium, also known as the clear layer, the stratum granulosum, also known as the granule layer, stratum spinosum, also known as the prickle cell layer, and stratum germinatum, also known as the basal layer. An easy way to learn these layers is Can Lucy's Granny Speak German. Can for corneum, Lucy for lucidium, Granny for granulosum, Speak for spinosum, and German for germinatum. The stratum corneum consists of 20 to 30 cell layers. It is the utmost layer, made up of keratin and horny scales made up of dead keratinocytes. It is divided into a coherent and desquamating layer. It's also known as an ulcerated squamous cells. This is the layer which varies most in thickness, especially in callous skin. Within this layer, the dead keratinocytes secrete defences which are part of our first immune defence. The stratum lucidium is a thin, clear layer, usually 2 to 3 cell layers, present in thicker skin found in the palms of the hands and soles of the feet. It protects the skin in the areas most common to damage, like the palms, the sides of the fingers, soles of the foot. Its multilaminar lipid structures is formed by combining glycerol within 3 fatty acid molecules. The stratum granulosum is 3 to 5 cell layers, contains diamond-shaped cells. It's composed of flattened, spindle-like cells. The cytoplasm of the cells is filled with granules. Keratinization process starts here. These granules excrete lipid substance that become part of lipid structure in the stratum lucidium. It's also a natural moisturizing factor and is created in this layer. Stratum spinosum, or 8 to 10 cell layers, also known as the prickle cell layer, contains irregular polyhedral cells with cytoplasmic processes. The cells change shape and become more flattened. sometimes called spines, that extend outwards and contract neighbouring cells by desmosomes. Dendritic cells can be found in this layer. Langerhans cells are microphages of the skin. They help to drive protective immune response. Any harmful microbes that make it into the epidermis will encounter Langerhans cells. This group of protective skin cells detect invaders and communicate their presence to T cells, which react by launching an immune response. The stratum germination, also known as the basal layer, is the deepest layer separated from the dermis by the basement membrane. It's the primary site of cell division. The term mitosis is used to describe the duplication and distribution of chromosomes, the structures that carry genetic information. It contains melanocytes. Melanocytes produce a pigment melanin inside melanosomes. This cell is dark and dendritic in shape. Melanin production is the basic function of melanocytes. Merkel cells. These cells are very close to the nerve endings that receive the sensation of touch. The cells also contain substances that may act as hormones. A melanocyte is a type of cell that primarily located in the basal layer of the epidermis. These cells produce melanin, a brown pigment that is responsible for skin colorization and protecting against the harmful effects of UV light. They are also present in hair and in the iris of the eyes. The amount of melanin produced is affected by genetics and hormone factors. People with darker skin have more active melanocytes compared to people with lighter skin. However, the pigment of our skin also involves the most abundant cells of our epidermis, the keratinocytes. If you remember the main purpose of keratin-producing cells that preserve against invasion to protect against UV radiation and to minimize heat and water loss. While melanocytes produce, store and release melanin, keratinocytes are the largest recipients of this pigment. The dermal-epidermal junction plays an important role in the strength and adherence of both the epidermis and the dermis. The junction is permeable, full of holes and channels allowing movement of substances. This junction has three functions: epidermal and dermal adherence, mechanical support for the epidermis, and a barrier to the exchange of cells and of some large molecules across the junction. The dermis is connected to the epidermis at the level of the basement membrane and consists of two layers of connective tissue, the papillary and reticular layers, which merge together. The papillary layer is the upper layer, thinner, composed of loose connective tissue and is highly vascular. The reticular layer is the deepest layer, thicker, less cellular, and consists of dense connective tissue and bundles of collagen fibers. The dermis houses the sweat glands, the hair follicles, sensory neurons, and blood vessels. Blood vessels and lymphatic vessels are found in the dermal layer of the skin. These vessels are important for temperature regulation. The mechanism by which the body regulates temperature through the skin is very effective and works by increased blood flow to the skin, transferring heat from the body to the environment. The changes in the blood flow are controlled by the autonomic nervous system, systematic stimulation, resulting in vasoconstriction, your heat retention, and while vasodilation results in heat loss. Dermal blood vessels carry nutrients to upper layers of the skin and help to regulate temperature. Your lymphatic capillaries work in conjunction with the blood supply, carrying away waste products from the area. Hair follicles extend from the deeper dermal tissue through the basement membrane and epithelial layer and extend beyond the border of the skin. The base of the hair follicle is deep within the dermal tissue, and the hair follicle itself is anchored to the skin by erector pili muscle and sebaceous glands. This is a tiny muscle that attaches to the base of the hair follicle at one end and to the dermal tissue on the other end. In order to generate heat, when the body is cold, the erector pili muscle contracts all at once, causing the hair to stand up straight on the skin. Sebaceous glands are small oily producing glands present in the skin of mammals. They are usually attached to the hair follicles and release a fatty substance called sebum into the follicle duct and hence to the surface of the skin. Sebum has many purposes. Once this oily substance makes its way to the surface of your skin, it keeps your skin waterproof. It's a barrier in two ways. It keeps too much water from getting into your body, and it prevents you from losing too much water from your skin. Secretes acids that with sebum and sweat form the acid mantle. Acid mantle is a natural skin moisturizer that helps to control the level of microorganisms on the skin's surface and prevents from infection. The primary function of sweat glands is to keep the core body temperature at approximately 37 degrees Celsius by releasing sweat in a hot environment or during physical activity. Sweat glands are innervated by neurons, so the process of sweating is controlled by the central nervous system. There are two types, eccrine glands and apocrine glands. Eccrine glands open directly into the surface of the skin, excrete watery sweat, control body temperature, found all over the body, especially the palms of the hands and soles of the feet. Apocrine glands open into the hair follicle. They are found in the groin and armpits. They produce body odor. The sweat is consistent of water, fatty acids, urea, uric acid, etc. The dermis contains nerve endings, sweat glands and oil glands, your sebaceous glands, the hair follicles and blood vessels. The nerve endings sense pain, touch, pressure and temperature. Some areas of the skin contain more nerve endings than others. You have messenger receptors that detect light touch. Pitocin corpuscles perceive deep pressure and vibrational changes. Ruffin endings detect deep pressure and stretching of the skin's collagen fibers. The papillary dermis is composed of loose connective tissue that is highly vascular. The reticular layer is the deep layer, forming a thick layer of dense connective tissue. It houses blood vessels, nerve endings, hair follicles and glands. The dermal papillae are finger-like projections arranged into double rows, increasing the surface area between the epidermis and dermis, thereby strengthening the junction with the epidermis and increasing the amount of exchange of oxygen, nutrients and waste. It contains blood vessels and nerves which supply the hair with nutrients. Collagen and elastin are fibers that make up the supporting structure of the skin. Collagen gives the skin its firmness, while elastin keeps the skin tight. Both of these fibers are plentiful in young skin and start to break down with natural aging as a result of sun exposure. The fibroblast is the major cell type of the dermis, and its main function is to synthesize collagen, elastin and viscous gel within the dermis. It's responsible for production of aloe tissue, collagen and elastin, and can be damaged by UV. Mast cells contribute to hemostasis in the immune system. They serve as the first line of defense against antigens entering the body. They produce histamine as an allergic reaction and response and anti-collagen heparin. A histolite is a normal immune cell that is found in many parts of the body, especially in the bone marrow, the bloodstream, the skin, the liver, the lung, and lymph glands and the spleen. White blood cells, also known as leukocytes, are the cells of the immune system that are involved in protecting the body against both infectious disease and foreign invaders. Subcutaneous tissue, which is also known as the hypodermis, is the innermost layer of skin. It is made of fat and connective tissues that house larger blood vessels and nerves, and it acts as an insulator to help regulate body temperature. It's built from loose connective tissue and adipose tissue. Distribution depends on the sex of the person, and it is not influenced by external factors. The amount depends on the lifestyle. Its function is to store fat, thermal insulation, improvement of the skin sliding, shock absorption, role in hormonal imbalance. The skin perspires by producing moisture through secretions of the superficial glands. The evaporation of this moisture has a cooling effect on the body. The dilation, expansion of capillaries causes the reduction of the body's surface heat through radiation. The skin gets flushed. The skin's immersed blood supply helps regulate temperature. Dilated vessels allow for heat loss, while constricted vessels retain heat. The skin regulates body temperature with its blood supply. Humidity affects thermal regulation by limiting sweat evaporation and thus heat loss. Vasodilation has a cooling effect on the skin. Pores dilate. Sweating occurs. Vasoconstriction, the capillaries constrict. The skin is pale. Erector pili muscles contract. Hair stands up. The body shivers, and it raises the body's temperature. The skin is the largest organ of your body, and since it is porous, it absorbs whatever you put on it. Some chemical substance can penetrate through the skin, the hair follicles and sweat glands. The primary function of the skin is to act as a barrier. The skin provides protection from mechanical impacts, pressure, variations in temperature, microorganisms, radiation and chemicals, from wear and tear, against infection, and chemicals against ultraviolet light. Acid pH of the skin inhibits bacterial production, and melanin protects against UV damage. Nerve endings warn of possible trauma. The nerve endings can sense pain, touch, pressure and temperature. Some areas of the skin contain more nerve endings than others. The skin acts as a submental filter to the kidneys for removing waste from the blood. When the other organs are congested, the skin tries to push out toxins through the skin via the sweat glands. The skin throws off about 2 pounds of toxin waste a day in the form of perspiration. The skin contains an extensive network of nerve cells that detect and relay changes in the environment. There are separate receptors for heat, cold, touch and pain. Damage to these cells is known as neuropathy, which results in a loss of sensation in the affected area. The epidermis is the major source of vitamin D for the body, stimulated by UV light, which converts 7-dehydrocholesterol cholesterol in the sebum into vitamin D. It circulates in the blood. Any excess is stored in the liver. Melanin prevents the skin from the potentially damaging effects of UV light. Exposure of the human epidermis to sunlight produces melanin, causing a moderate tan effect on the skin to increase the amount of photoprotective pigment. A hormone called MH stimulates the melanocytes to produce this melanin. The acid mantle is a thin film on the skin's surface composed of lipids from the oil glands mixed with amino acids from sweat. The acid mantle's main job is to keep the good stuff like moisture in and the bad stuff like bacteria and pollution out. It rests on the outer layers of the epidermis. It contributes to skin protection, makes the first line of skin barrier defense. It's a natural hydrolytic film, complex fluid entirely formed by substance secreted from the sebaceous glands and sweat glands. Acidic pH is to control growth of bacteria on the skin. Let's review. The skin is the largest organ of the body with a total area of 20 square feet. The skin protects us from microbes and other elements, helps regulate the body temperature and permits the sensation of touch, heat and cold. The skin has 3 layers: the epidermis, the outermost layer of the skin, provides a waterproof barrier and creates our skin tone. The dermis, beneath the epidermis, contains tough connective tissue, hair follicles and sweat glands. The deeper subcutaneous tissue, also known as the hypodermis, is made of fat and connective tissue. The skin colour is created by special cells called melanocytes, which produce the pigment melanin. Melanocytes are located in the epidermis. Melanin's primary role is to protect the skin from damaging UV light from the sun, which can cause skin cancer. When skin is exposed to UV light, melanocytes start producing melanin, causing a suntan. Key functions of the skin include protection, regulation of body temperature and sensation. Some of the many roles of the skin include protecting against pathogens. Langerhans cells in the skin are part of the immune system. Storing lipids, which is your fats, and water. Creating sensation through nerve endings that detect temperature, pressure, vibrations, touch and injury. Controlling water loss by preventing water from escaping by evaporation. Providing water resistance by preventing nutrients from being washed away from the skin. Helping with the thermoregulation by producing sweat and dilating blood vessels, which help keep the body cool. Goosebumps and blood vessel constriction help people retain heat.